How's it going, everybody? Got quite a lot to talk about in this video. A lot of discussion around Sony and PlayStation going forward, especially with the departure of Jim Ryan. But one topic that is really at the heart of PlayStation right now is the idea of games as a service. And it seems like a lot of the first-party Sony studios that are, in charge of doing a lot of these live service games may be somewhat uncomfortable. First-party Sony studios are reportedly uncomfortable with the pivot towards games as a service, as noted on X-Fire. I'll leave a link in the description box below, but this is coming from Jason Schreier, that even Bungie's expertise has not yet been able to turn PlayStation Studios into a game service factory. Obviously, games as a service is a big thing that PlayStation is trying to push, and I can understand why, and I understand why a lot of people are hating on Jim Ryan and are cheering the fact that he is stepping down. Now, his reasons to step down are actually, pretty understandable. The travel schedule is crazy at his age. A lot of people can't handle that travel schedule, and people might say, yeah, you could just do Zoom calls and whatnot, but he had a crazy travel schedule, going to various places, Japan, California, etc. Just living with jet lag isn't a great thing, and I understand why that could cause someone to step down, but obviously a lot of people saw this step down as, reason to celebrate as far as Jim Ryan's trajectory on where he was taking PlayStation. And one of the big factors of PlayStation coming from Jim Ryan in the future is the moves to games as a service. Obviously, they were still doing their big budget single player games, but when you look at the slate of games coming up, it's obvious that a large portion of their resources were going towards games as a service. You cannot slice it any other way. That's why the Concords of the world exist. That's why the Fair Games of the world exist, and that's why they have, 10 live service games in development or somewhere around that number. And it was even noted that it would be foolish to think that every single one of those live service games would be a success. But it was noted that they would launch more than 10 new live service games over the next 4 years, and also the idea was that Bungie would help prioritize those games and optimize those games. But when you're talking about working with a lot of studios that are familiar with working on big budget single player games, the move to live service is obviously going to be a stark shift, even with the help of Bungie. And you really do see how Last of Us's Factions mode, how that ended up. Schreier spoke a little bit about this, noting that it's a drastic pivot from a familiar genre to something brand new. This bet on multiplayer games may not pay off the way Ryan and his team had once hoped for, and you have to look at it from the lens of Jim Ryan. I know us as the hardcore gamer and the people that are playing these big single player games through the lens of Jim Ryan, which he probably doesn't care that much about the quality of their portfolio. He cares about what is the bottom line gonna look like. Now, obviously, that's a little bit of a stretch. He does care about the quality of the portfolio, but the quality, the Metacritic scores and all that, that's always gonna correlate towards sales numbers and revenue. Jim Ryan is focused on revenue. From his lens, what do you think he's gonna think when he sees games like Fortnite and such generating so much revenue? That is the idea of live service. Let's throw as much stuff at the wall and let's pray that one or two of these games stick. They are not foolish in thinking that they are sinking millions upon millions of dollars across 10 games and they expect all 10 games to, stick. They fully well know that 8 of those games are probably gonna flop. They'd be happy with 2 of 10 of those games being successes. And you know what? Having 2 out of 10 being a success and having 2 games that you can monetize for a lengthy period of time, through their lens, they're like, this is a smart business proposition because at least 2 games are gonna be a success, especially if we're attaching Last of Us IPs and Horizon to some of these live service games and notable PlayStation brands to these live service titles. Oh, they're definitely gonna click and we're gonna have a couple successes, and then you can monetize them for a long period of time. Yes, you still have to invest in those games, update them, everything like that, but the return on investment is so grandiose versus when you look at, Horizon Forbidden West, Last of Us Part 2, these $200 million games that, yes, they sell well, but at the end of the day, that is such a significant investment towards those games that the profit margin can only be so high. With a live service game, oh, you're golden. And Sony is not the only one doing this. We've seen Ubisoft throw so many live service games at the wall. How many of them have actually stuck? you know, I would say that from my vantage point, and I think a lot of you guys would agree with me, I would have Sony focus more so on their first-party single-player experience, but at the same time, create multiplayer experiences of the old, not necessarily completely focused on microtransactions. Yeah, you can have them there, but what is the harm in doing a Killzone 2 remaster, putting it on PlayStation 5, and putting it on PC day and day? And, you know, you have a multiplayer game there. See if you can at least get people excited about multiplayer experiences before you just go knee-deep into live service game after live service game, because I'm sorry, based on the projections, and we're talking about maybe Concord and Fair Game coming out in 2024, we don't know anything about these games, and they were kind of significant parts of the PlayStation Showcase Marathon as well, of course, but man, I have a bad feeling about these games, and I think it's just gonna devolve into a lot of vitriol from the more hardcore PlayStation community, that they're gonna be like, yo, what is this? You're signing a lot of third-party exclusives, that's great, but where are the first-party games? Look at this year. This year is bare bones in terms of first-party games outside of Spider-Man 2. Then you go into 2024, and what do you have to look forward to? I see a lot of people suggesting Wolverine is gonna be out in 2024. I don't think that's going to be the case. Stellar Blade just keeps getting delayed. I don't know if that's even coming out in 2024. Let's hope it does. That was scheduled for 2023. Rise of the Ronin, I think, will be out in 2024, and I get that Sony is publishing that game. It's a Team Ninja title, so that's not really a first-party Worldwide Studios game, but whatever. At least it's a nice game that hopefully will turn out fairly well. But when you talk about the core PlayStation first-party, usually you would get 2 games a year, and that's at the bare minimum. You would get like 2018, you got Spider-Man and you got God of War. I think that is what you should try to replicate every year, and this year you're just getting Spider-Man 2, which, don't get me wrong, that game's gonna crush it. Like, we don't have to talk about that, but you know, I think the live service investment is gonna get in the way of that. And again, I understand why they're doing it. Like, I understand why all these publishers and the publishers are doing it. It's more of a publisher decision rather than the developers. I'm sure the developers would much more prioritize what they've always been working on, but that's just the reality of the game we're playing right now, where these games are getting more and more expensive to develop for, so they're gonna pivot towards something else that can lead to a bigger profit margin, because you see these games like Callisto Protocol, like Immortals of Avam, we've been talking about it over and over again. There is so much risk attached to those games, and the reward can be significant at times, but the risk is kind of daunting to go towards. Now, Sony has been pretty good at launching new IPs like a Horizon and having it be successful, but you also look at Days Gone, that wasn't as successful. So again, I understand. I just don't think it's the most advantageous thing for them to do, especially with their audience. I think there will be a little bit of pushback, and we'll see how it ultimately goes down. But I think a lot of those resources could be better prioritized, you know, working with a Sony Japan. I know their games may have not crushed it, but creating a portfolio of compelling games that does make PlayStation a great place to play a lot of games. And it does feel like we're not getting the game rollout that we had in the past. At least that is from my vantage point, and that is mainly assessing 2023 and also the outlook for 2024, which I gotta say, the outlook for 2024 doesn't look great, and that's what I've been saying over and over again. And the fact we're into October at this point and we still don't know the 2024 lineup, I know people are hedging their bets on Wolverine and Death Stranding 2. Death Stranding 2, I could see 2024. Wolverine, very much not seeing 2024 for that. But let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to hear your input, and I do think that the live service push, they're gonna go down this well for a little while, but you know, if they don't find a lot of successes, I think it's gonna be a pivot back to what they did in the past. But that'll do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.